The distress beacon had been silent for 74 years. The Empire had long written off the Andros fringe, calling it a navigational dead zone, nothing but frozen debris, magnetic storms, and the scattered ruins of a failed human colony. What they didn't know, or refused to believe, was that someone had survived out there. Someone angry. Someone who remembered. The first time the scanners picked up the anomaly, it was dismissed. A glitch. Static echoes. But then it moved. Not drifted, maneuvered. Deliberately. Like a predator circling back to old hunting grounds. Commander Varric stood rigid on the deck of the Dominion-class cruiser Sirentha, eyes locked on the feed. The object was massive, shaped like nothing in the Empire's archives, brutish, asymmetrical, and pulsing with a power signature that didn't make sense. No transponders, no IFF, just silence and cold, dark mass. "That's not possible," one of the bridge officers whispered, breaking the silence. "That thing's emitting readings like a dreadnought, but it's not—" "Not ours," Varric said. His voice was tight, jaw clenched. "And not any known race in this sector." He didn't say what everyone else was thinking, that it looked human, or at least built by human hands, old human hands, from a time before Earth bent the knee to the Galactic Accord, before humanity was integrated. Back in the Andros Rift, the ship that shouldn't exist floated like a beast from a forgotten age. Scarred hull, blackened plating, engines repurposed from scavenged alien tech. Its name was burned into the stern like a challenge. The Revenant. Inside, in a dim-lit command pod that still smelled faintly of blood, grease, and recycled air, one man stood alone, worn, grey-bearded, and hollow-eyed. His name was Dane, and he hadn't heard another human voice in over a decade. He didn't need to. The ship spoke to him now, in groans of cooling metal, in the hiss of life support, in the rhythmic thrum of its stolen hypercore that pulsed like a second heart in his chest. It wasn't alive, not truly. But he'd bled into it, buried friends in its walls, cursed it, rebuilt it, made it hate like he did. He watched the data scroll on a cracked display, the Imperial patrols moving closer. They'd seen him. That was the point. They thought they'd erased his world, burned his colony when it refused voluntary cultural assimilation. They told the rest of the galaxy it was an accident, a failed experiment. No survivors. But Dane had survived, and so had the Revenant. The Empire didn't remember what real humans were, not the kind that crawled out of wreckage and taught themselves how to survive in hell. They remembered Earth after the treaties, after the submission. They remembered the diplomats. Not the killers, not the builders. That was about to change. He tapped a button, and the systems hummed to life. The stolen weapons warmed up. Ancient shields groaned and flickered. The ship wasn't pretty, wasn't fast, but it was a war cry made of steel. A proximity alarm blared. They were close now. Dane smiled, and for the first time in years, it wasn't hollow. "Let's see if they still bleed." The Sirentha dropped out of sublight just beyond the fringe of the Andros Rift, its escort frigates flanking it like nervous hounds. Varric paced the command deck, eyes locked on the flickering hollow feed. The object was closer now, closer than it should have been. "Still no comms?" he snapped. "Nothing, Commander," replied his comms officer. "It's not responding to any frequency, no broadcast, no handshake, no response." "Then it's hostile," Varric muttered. "No one ignores a hail from the Empire, unless they're hiding something." Truth was, Varric felt it in his gut. Something old. A whisper of dread. That ship didn't just ignore them, it radiated contempt. The kind that said you're not worth speaking to. His tactical officer glanced up, pale. "Sir, we just got a read on the outer hull plating. It's old, but parts of it match human military schematics. Pre-accord." You mean pre-subjugation. The bridge went silent. That word wasn't supposed to be used. It was politically incorrect. Earth hadn't been subjugated, they were told. It had been brought into galactic peace. Except every soldier on that bridge knew the truth. Earth resisted. Earth burned. And Earth surrendered. But not all of it, apparently. Dane stood at the forward viewport of the Revenant, watching the tiny lights blink into view in the distance. They looked like fireflies. Imperial frigates, smooth and arrogant, gliding like they owned space. He remembered when they came for his colony. Smooth, polite words. Then the executions started. Then the sterilizations. They said it was for the good of integration. Said Earth's culture was dangerous. Said independent human systems needed guidance. Dane's wife had been a botanist. They burned her greenhouse with her inside it. His son, shot when he tried to protect her. They left Dane buried under rubble, his ribs shattered, lungs full of blood. He dug his way out with his hands, buried his dead with his teeth clenched so hard his molars cracked. And now they were here again. New uniforms, same arrogance. Targeting arrays online. The ship's AI chimed. It wasn't a real AI, just stitched together scrap code he'd built from pirate cores and dead alien databanks. But it worked. It knew pain. It understood vengeance. Dane moved to the command console and ran his hands across the controls. Everything had been repurposed. Stolen weaponry, salvaged engines, alien tech fused with human will. A Frankenstein beast born from rage and genius. His fingers danced across the activation keys. He didn't warn them, didn't negotiate. He unleashed. On board the Cerentha, alarms screamed as a burst of impossible energy tore through space. One of the escort frigates, Rivelin, exploded in a silent inferno, her shields bypassed as if they weren't even there. "What the hell was that?" Varric barked, lunging toward the tactical console. "No signature, no charge-up, it just fired, like the weapon was already hot." Another flash. The second frigate vanished in an arc of plasma and twisting metal. "That thing's moving, sir, maneuvering like it's not even obeying inertia." Varric stared at the display. The object wasn't just fighting, it was hunting them. Tactically, with precision. Every move it made was calculated, brutal, efficient. Like it had studied their formations, like it knew them. He gritted his teeth. "All batteries, full barrage, bring it down." His bridge officers moved to comply, but even they could see it. This wasn't going to be a clean engagement. That ship was a relic, but not dead. Not even close. Inside the Revenant, Dane watched the barrage of plasma bolts hurtle toward him. He didn't flinch. The ship's repulsor grid, jerry-rigged from alien stealth tech, shimmered and bled red, but held. He diverted auxiliary power to the starboard thrusters, rolled under the barrage, and came up behind the Cerentha like a shark rising from the deep. His lips curled. "Your turn." He launched a cluster missile, an old Earth design, banned by the Accord for being inhumane. It split mid-flight into 20 smaller warheads, each programmed to seek vulnerable hull seams. On the Cerentha, chaos erupted. And Dane just watched. Varric's ears rang as the bridge shuddered under the impact. Sparks flew from overhead panels, and a power conduit burst, flooding the command deck with smoke. Screams echoed through the hallway beyond as fire suppression bots scrambled to contain the damage. "Hull breach! Mid-deck engineering!" someone shouted. "Seal it off!" Varric barked, grabbing onto the edge of the command chair as the ship lurched again. "Get us out of its firing arc!" The Cerentha tried to pivot, but the enemy ship, that thing, was already repositioning. Too fast, too sharp. No ship that size should have been able to move like that. It was like it had no weight, no rules. Varric's tactical display showed structural hits piling up, Shields had failed on the port side. The cluster warheads hadn't just damaged the cruiser, they'd humiliated it, punched through in ways that shouldn't have been possible. And worst of all, it was just sitting there now, watching, mocking. Inside the Revenant, Dane sat in his pilot's chair, heart steady, hands still. The tactical interface showed the Imperial cruiser listing to one side, venting atmosphere. It could still fight, but it didn't want to. Not anymore. He leaned back, staring into the black. His body was scarred, tendons worn thin from decades of hard life. But his mind was sharp, steel-wired, fueled by loss, fed by memory. He didn't just build the Revenant, he became it. The ship whispered a status update. The hypercore was stable, shields holding, no damage taken. He clicked open an old audio file, grainy with age. A boy's voice, his son's, laughing as he learned to ride a bike across the red sand of Kalen's Reach. Dane listened to it for a moment, eyes cold. Then he shut it off. No time for ghosts. Not yet. Varric stumbled into the war room as med drones zipped past, carrying wounded. His XO met him there, face pale. "We're outmatched, sir. That ship's using tech we can't identify. It's old, but enhanced. Modified with alien systems, most of them illegal. That engine core, it's giving off a waveform signature I've only seen in theoretical designs." "Who's on board?" Varric demanded. "No crew signatures, just one life form, human dot." Varric stared at her. "You're saying one man is piloting a ship that just destroyed 2 of our frigates and crippled us?" "Yes, sir." For a moment no one said a word. Varric exhaled sharply, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "How is that possible?" Her voice was quiet. "Maybe the better question is, why did we ever think it wasn't? Patch me through." The AI complied, tapping into the Imperial frequency. For a moment there was silence, then crackle. Then a face appeared on the small central monitor. Commander Varric, bruised and bleeding, but upright. Dane didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just leaned forward. "You killed my world," he said. Varric didn't respond. He didn't need to. "You burned my wife, shot my boy, then wrote it off like we didn't exist." Silence. "I remembered. While you slept safe in your walls, I crawled through wreckage. I learned to survive in places your maps don't show. I hunted your outposts, stripped your dead. I built this from the bones of your empire." Dane's voice lowered, flat and venomous. "This is the first day of your reckoning." Varric looked into the eyes of a man who had nothing left to lose and everything to take. And in that moment, he understood. This wasn't war. This was judgment. The transmission ended, but Dane's words lingered like smoke in Varric's mind. The bridge was quiet now. Even the beeping consoles seemed hesitant to make noise. The crew stared at their screens, no one daring to speak. Varric finally turned toward his XO. "Run a scan on that ship. Deep scan. I want everything." She hesitated. "Sir, we've already tried." "Try again." She obeyed, fingers flying over her console, pushing past corrupted data and sensor interference. The moment the scan started feeding real-time structure schematics, her eyes widened. This isn't a dreadnought, at least not in the conventional sense. Its frame is pieced together from several generations of human warships. Some components are over 100 years old. Others are alien, pirate grade, maybe even Black Market Zero's tech. Varric leaned over her shoulder, watching the schematics shift. "How the hell is it still flying?" "It's not just flying," she muttered. "It's evolving." Varric's blood ran cold. "He's been improving it, tearing down our tech and making it better, stronger. That thing isn't a ship, sir. It's a weapon forged out of hatred." He straightened, face grim. "Then it's not just a threat. It's a message. Dane sat in the stillness of the Revenant, fingers tracing the names scratched into the console beside him. There were 27 of them. People he'd buried. People the Empire had erased. He pressed a button, and the next stage of the plan activated. Stealth drones, jury-rigged from old mining bots, launched from beneath the ship's battered hull. They moved silently, fanning out through space, invisible to standard scans. Each one carried something simple, an encrypted data spike containing images, footage, and files. Proof. Proof of what the Empire had done. Burned villages, executed civilians, genetic purges, all scrubbed from public archives, all buried deep in black site vaults the Empire swore didn't exist. Now they'd be broadcast across open frequencies. Every neutral station, every independent colony, every forgotten outpost where humans still whispered in the shadows. The truth was no longer hidden. He whispered to himself as the drones vanished into the stars. Let them choke on it. On the Sirentha, Varric watched the sudden explosion of comms traffic light up his displays. What the hell is this? He asked. The comms officer turned toward him, face pale. It's a data dump, a massive one. It's bypassing our firewalls. Civilian networks are already picking it up. Sir, it's full of execution footage, surveillance logs, biolab experiments, all of it, branded with our insignia. His XO stared at him. He's not just attacking us with weapons, he's attacking our legitimacy. Varric clenched his fists. His world was unraveling faster than he could respond. If this got out, if the colonies started to question the Accord again, they'd lose control. This man, this lone survivor, was striking at the idea of empire. He turned to the helm. Back us out. Now alert High Command. Dane watched the Sirentha retreat, dragging its wounded pride behind it. He didn't fire again. He wanted them to live, to carry fear back to the heart of the Empire. He stood slowly, joints cracking from years in low gravity. He walked the length of the ship, passing through dim corridors patched with alien scrap and human ingenuity. Every dent, every scorch mark was a memory, every sealed door a grave. The AI spoke softly. Next target? Dane paused. Orbital Relay 9, he said. That was where the orders had come from. The bureaucrats, the planners, the cowards who sat behind shields and sent death to his door. He would burn them next. He sat back in the command chair, eyes cold. The galaxy had forgotten what a real human looked like. He was going to remind them. Orbital Relay 9 sat like a jewel above the imperial core world of Thalus Prime, a testament to arrogance wrapped in titanium and polished glass. It wasn't a warship. It didn't need to be. No one ever attacked this close to the heart. The relay was the hub for all sub-sector communications, housing the men and women who pulled the strings of distant wars and signed death orders without leaving their seats. Bureaucrats, strategists, the clean-handed architects of genocide. Dane had studied its layout for years. He knew its blind spots. The Revenant didn't approach in a straight line. It dropped out of warp just beyond the planet's magnetic field, masked in the shadow of a shattered moon where wreckage still floated from a forgotten skirmish decades ago. Perfect cover. Inside, Dane sat hunched in his chair, sweat beading down his back as the ship strained. This wasn't just another hit. This was personal. Orbital Relay 9 was where the death warrant for his colony had originated. He patched into the last transmission again, his wife's voice, static choked but calm. We love you, Dane. They're coming. I can hear the engines. I'll keep the kids in the shelter. Don't worry about us. Just survive. The feed ended with silence. No screams, no explosions, just silence. That silence had lived in Dane's bones for 20 years. Now he would make the Empire feel it too. Inside the relay, Chief Administrator Velin sipped his glass of Draxian wine, staring through the panoramic viewport at Thalus Prime's sunrise. Peaceful, controlled. His assistant entered the room, visibly shaken. "Sir, a vessel just appeared on long-range sensors. It's not broadcasting identification. Moving fast. Inbound trajectory." Velin raised a brow, unconcerned. "How fast?" "Too fast, sir." He set his glass down. "I want visuals." When the screen blinked to life, his expression changed. There was no mistaking the ship. It was the one in the leaked broadcasts, the one that shouldn't exist. The Revenant. He backed away from the monitor as if the image might reach through it and strangle him. "Is this a declaration of war?" His assistant asked quietly. "No," Velin said, voice thin and shaking. "This is vengeance." Dane didn't send warnings. He didn't send ultimatums. He launched his breach pods directly at the relay's surface plating, 8 of them, sharp and fast, burning through the station's armor like knives through flesh. He didn't even need troops. The pods were loaded with EMP spikes, localized viral attacks, and neurodisruptors stolen from defunct Zero's tech. They weren't meant to kill. They were meant to humiliate. Within moments, the relay's defense grid went offline. Lights dimmed. Consoles shorted out. Guards collapsed, twitching to the floor as their implants fried. Inside the chaos, Dane walked through the carnage like a ghost wrapped in blackened armor, his face hidden behind a cracked helmet. His boots echoed on the floor. No one tried to stop him. No one could. He found Velin cowering behind a shattered glass desk, weeping into his hands. Dane stood over him, silent for a long moment. Velin dared to speak. "Please, I was just doing my duty. I didn't know what they were planning. I didn't—" Dane drew a long, rusted blade from his back. Not a gun, not an alien weapon. A blade. Human steel. Personal. "I did." The slash was clean. Velin's blood stained the polished floor, mixing with ash and sparks. Dane turned without another word and strode toward the relay's core. He placed a single data spike into the primary terminal, unleashing the second wave of leaks. Not just classified data, identity lists, names, faces, signatures. Every official who ever signed a purge order, every officer who executed a civilian, every researcher who experimented on prisoners, every last one of them. Their secrets were no longer safe. He left the relay burning behind him. As he drifted back toward the Revenant, engines igniting in the blackness, the AI spoke softly. "Next?" Dane didn't answer right away. He was thinking bigger now. It was time the Imperial Senate heard his voice. The Senate chamber of the Galactic Empire was a place of illusions, order, peace, control. Massive and marble white, it floated above the surface of the capital planet like a monument to bureaucracy and lies. Senators from every system arrived in sleek ships, dressed in silk, guarded by drones, never once dirtying their hands with the blood they voted to spill. On this day, they met in emergency session. They were panicking. The attacks on the Serentha and Orbital Relay 9 weren't just acts of violence. They were acts of defiance. The data leaks had spread like a virus. Protests were erupting across dozens of colonies. Old scars were reopening. Earth-descendant systems, long silent under the heel of the Accord, were finding their voices again. And now came the whisper no one wanted to hear. "He's coming here." He set the photo down gently. The ship's core rumbled under his boots as it broke through the capital planet's orbital defenses. There was no resistance, not because they couldn't stop him, but because no one expected it. No one could believe he would come this far. No sane man would storm the heart of the Empire alone. But Dane wasn't sane. He was resolved. Inside the Senate chamber, voices rose in furious panic. "We need to shut down planetary access." He's already inside the system. What good will that do now? We should have hunted him when we had the chance. The people are turning on us. He's winning with truth, not just weapons. And then, silence. The chamber doors groaned open. Smoke and static poured in. A lone figure walked through the haze. No guards, no security protocols, just him. Dane stepped into the circle of power like a ghost from the past. His armor was black, scorched, pieces fused with alien alloy and old human plating. The senators stared in frozen horror as he climbed the central platform and looked them dead in the eyes. He didn't shout, he didn't threaten, he just stood there. And then he spoke. "I was born in one of your colonies," he said quietly. "We paid our taxes, we followed your codes, we bowed our heads. You told us we were part of your future." He let the silence breathe. "Then you sent death to our doorstep." No one moved. No one dared. "My wife died planting food for your soldiers. My son was shot protecting her from your enforcers, and you called it an unfortunate miscommunication." He pulled out a small device and dropped it onto the floor. It activated instantly, projecting holograms, faces, names, screams. Proof. Their crimes played out in high definition, surrounding them. 100 moments of horror. They tried to look away. Dane didn't let them. "You called us savages, called us dangerous, said we needed guidance, but we built our homes with our hands. We lived by sweat, not conquest. And you crushed us anyway." He stepped forward. "You forgot what real humans were. You forgot what happens when you corner one who has nothing left." He paused at the edge of the platform and looked around. "You will never forget again." And then he detonated the charges. Not to destroy the chamber, but to lock it. The doors sealed behind him. Security systems shut down. Power rerouted to broadcast. Everything he said, every face of the guilty, streamed across the galaxy. He wasn't hiding anymore. This was trial by fire, and everyone was watching. Outside the sealed Senate chamber, Imperial security forces scrambled, shouting over comms and smashing override panels. But nothing responded. Every failsafe had been rerouted, every exit locked. The most powerful men and women in the galaxy, the untouchable architects of control, were now prisoners in their own hall. Inside, Dane stood calm in the center of the chaos. Some senators screamed, others pleaded. One tried to rush him and got a knee to the gut that left him gasping on the floor. But most just watched, dazed, knowing deep down what they'd always feared, that someday someone would come. Someone would remember. A senator in deep violet robes, old, proud, trembling now, stepped forward. "You think you'll survive this?" He spat. "You think you're a hero? You're a terrorist. You've doomed yourself." Dane stepped toward him. "I was dead the day you burned my home. This question mark, this is just the echo." The senator's lip curled. "You'll die here." Dane nodded slowly. "Probably. But you'll live with this. Every world will know your names, your faces, what you did. There's no erasing it this time, no miscommunication, no cover-up." The senator tried to speak again, but Dane cut him off. "Sit down and watch." Across the galaxy, on colony worlds and fringe systems, in old human settlements long forgotten by the Accord, the broadcast continued. Citizens crowded around terminals. Miners stopped working. Soldiers paused mid-patrol. Even pirates and smugglers listened. They didn't hear a polished rebel speech. They heard grief, fury, truth, the kind of truth no one could fake. And for the first time in decades, something dangerous began to stir in their hearts, something the Empire had spent generations trying to erase. Pride. Back in the chamber, Dane's internal clock ticked. He didn't expect to leave alive. That wasn't the goal. The goal was already done. The message had been sent. He knelt and opened a small panel in his chest armor, revealing a heart-monitoring detonator. He placed a hand on it, breathing slow. But then the chamber flickered. The power system, his hacked failsafe, glitched. Not from interference. From external override. Dane's eyes narrowed. In orbit above the capital planet, a fleet of black, angular ships blinked into existence. Silent. No markings. No IFF. Not Imperial. They bore the jagged outline of former Earth war cruisers, the kind no one had seen since the subjugation. They hovered like sharks above the planet, engines humming with energy that didn't exist in official specs. And then, a message. A simple, chilling phrase. He's not alone. Inside the Senate chamber, a voice buzzed through Dane's helmet. It wasn't his AI. It was human. Rough. Familiar. Long time, Dane. Took us a while, but we saw your signal. His breath caught in his throat. It couldn't be. They were gone. The other survivors, scattered, broken. He hadn't heard from them in years. But here they were. Dozens of rogue warships, survivors, outcasts, engineers, smugglers, soldiers, the forgotten sons of Earth. Dane lowered his hand from the detonator. A slow grin tugged at the corner of his mouth for the first time in decades. He turned to the senators, eyes gleaming behind the cracked visor. "You were right," he said softly. "I won't die here." The sky above the Imperial capital turned black. Dozens of human ships hovered in formation, like a forgotten armada resurrected from legend. They weren't clean or beautiful. They were dented, battle-scarred, ugly, real. Every one of them bore a different history, survivors of distant purges, escaped colonies, scavenged fleets, built from scrap, hatred, and memory. But they shared one message. Humanity never surrendered. Inside the Senate chamber, Dane stood taller. The last piece of his plan, the part he hadn't dared to hope for, was now orbiting above him. The senators' expressions had shifted from fear to something worse. Realization. They had spent decades mocking human spirit, diluting it with regulations and treaties, integrating and erasing until all that was left was what they considered safe. But this was raw, untamed, the part they couldn't control. One senator collapsed into his chair, whispering, "We lost them." Another trembled, "They've been building. All this time." Dane turned toward the main projection console. His ship's AI had already patched into the planetary defense grid. With one motion, he could shut it all down. But he didn't. Instead, he opened a planetary-wide broadcast. One last time. His voice echoed across cities, ships, and colonies. "To the people of the Accord, I am not your enemy. I am your reflection. You buried the part of yourselves that remembers freedom. You traded it for silence, for security, for comfort. But comfort is a cage when bought with obedience." He stepped closer, looking directly into the camera. "I survived because I remembered what we were. Builders, fighters, family. You can remember too." The feed changed. His wife's photo, his son's smile, the garden dome, their graves. "Let this be the last time we bury the truth." He ended the broadcast, and the galaxy held its breath. Outside, the rogue fleet didn't attack. They didn't need to. The Senate issued no orders. The chain of command fractured. Military ships began defecting, opening private channels with the rogue humans. Some crews even mutinied. For the first time in 100 years, the Empire had no answer. Because the threat wasn't military. It was moral. They had lost the right to rule. 3 days later, Dane stood aboard the Revenant, surrounded by the others, commanders of the reborn fleet, each with their own pain, their own fire. No flags, no anthem, just resolve. Where to next? someone asked him. He looked at a map of the outer sectors. Dozens of unspoken wounds blinked like stars. Everywhere they buried us. Dane said. We dig it up. We show them we're still here. And so began the slow, grinding rebirth, not of rebellion, but remembrance. Dane wasn't a leader. He wasn't a prophet. He was just a man who refused to stay dead. And now the galaxy would never forget his name.